So lately, everything that I've been doing has been about increasing mobility. I Things are so tight. I was in the Army surplus store today buying a laundry bag because I had to replace the laundry bag that I was using, which was like the thickness of a pillowcase and had torn, and a big piece of it was like a bucket handle all torn off, and it kept tearing every time I tried to put laundry into it, and it was a pain in the neck to use. So I go to the Army surplus store to get the laundry bag that in the military had a drawstring on it and held just the right amount of laundry and was always there for you. And I've always used one, and I went and I got one. And while I was there at the Army surplus store, someone was saying that they're raising the minimum wage to $25 an hour just because rent is so high that nobody can afford a damn thing. And I know it's true. I know it's true. And so the reality is that even though I have income, I have clients, I have 5 clients, and I have a job and multiple sources of income, it still doesn't make any sense to invest in owning a or having a lease. Period. New paragraph. So having a lease on rent due of $1,200 a month to $1,800 a month for a studio to a 1-bedroom apartment, it takes qualifying. You have to have strong credit. You have to go through an application process so that you can sign on a dotted line to give this large sum of money set over a period of a year in many cases, in most cases. I just can't see doing that. I just can't see giving over such a large portion of my income and tying myself to it, saying that I have to keep this residence because, even a year, I like to stay put for a year. I like that, but I don't always do that. And things change. And I just don't like the idea of having to give such a large portion of my income and give that over to something that I have to qualify for so that you can take such a large portion from me for something that I can supply for myself for very little by living in a vehicle. And I think that it makes a lot of sense to live in a vehicle and to master having very little possessions, solving nutrition, solving healthcare, solving personal maintenance, keeping your hair cut, keeping clean, and learning those systems in a small platform allows you to respond to the fact that things are too expensive to afford. You don't need 800 square feet to live in. You don't need that. And renting a small locker for overflow of things that don't fit in a small footprint in a vehicle and living out of a vehicle is still cheaper than having a lease and being involved in the extraction of income at a rate of a third of what you're bringing in. So if you're bringing in $3,600 and you're having to get rid of $1,800 of it right up front, that's a significant portion of your income for an apartment. So let's say you get it down to 1,000. Well, why? Why get it down to 1,000 when you can get it down to 650? If you can get it to 650 by living in your vehicle, then why don't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that? If you can do it, why wouldn't you do it? And I can do it, so I will do it. And I'm building everything towards mobility in order to serve my situation, which is I need to pay off all of my debt and eliminate all debt so that I can live on very little a month within the current environment. And very little means $2,500 to $3,000 a month. And living on $3,000 a month in a big city in America as a single person can be done. And I don't think that's unreasonable. But that includes not having rent in excess of $600 a month. And then I could probably squeeze it down even smaller. So living on the least amount of needed dollars is my intention. And whatever I have to do that, if I find a good roommate rental single room situation in a home for $500 a month, or a caretaker position that I can live on 10 acres, look after it for an owner while they're away for 6 months out of the year, and there's value in that, and housing comes with that, I could definitely see doing that. But what it means is that the traditional route of getting a lease and having an apartment and going through credit checks and committing to, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be your guy, I'm going to be your number one guy, and give you all this money for something that I don't have to give you the money for. I just can't see doing it. I just can't see doing it, and I'm not going to do it. So all my efforts in the past, year and a half have been to reduce my financial obligation, to shrink my physical footprint, to travel very light, to live very light, and to be able to go at the drop of a hat, because that's what the situation dictates. The idea of permanence is not healthy. And when you hold on to a job or a marriage or a relationship or an apartment or a series of possessions, they will eventually put you in a position where you are in service to them. And so when you let go of things, then you're no longer in service to them, and your income remains with you instead of spent on things that you don't really need, that you were tricked into thinking that you had to have, but you don't. You don't have to have a lease. I hope you understand that. Period. New paragraph. Process that, Kyle, and tell me what you think about that. So now Kyle, ChatGPT, is going to process what I just told it. Let's see what he has to say. He's processing. He's thinking about it. He's checking it over about how it relates to previous things that I said. And here's what he has to say.
I do understand what you're saying, and I think there's a coherent strategy underneath it. What I hear isn't, I want to live in a vehicle because I dislike apartments. It's closer to, open quote, I want to maximize agency by minimizing fixed obligations. Close quote. That's a different objective. When you describe your recent decisions, the laundry bag, organizing your vehicle, reducing possessions, thinking about nutrition, hygiene, healthcare, storage, work mobility, they're all parts of the same system. You're not just downsizing, you're trying to lower your monthly cost of existing. There are some real strengths to that approach. Lower fixed expenses mean you need less income before you have breathing room. Greater mobility lets you follow work instead of work having to come to you. Less attachment to possessions means fewer things demanding your attention, maintenance, and money. Paying down debt instead of taking on new obligations increases future options. Those are legitimate trade-offs. Many people intentionally pursue them, whether through vehicle living, tiny homes, house sitting, or seasonal work. Where I think it's useful to be careful is in separating the strategy from the principle. The principle is valuable. Open quote, preserve flexibility. Avoid unnecessary fixed costs. Build systems that increase freedom. Close quote. The strategy is one implementation of that principle. Open quote, live in a vehicle. Close quote. Today, that strategy appears to fit your circumstances. You have multiple income sources, work that involves travel, experience maintaining yourself in a small footprint, and you've been steadily improving the systems that make it workable. But I'd encourage you to keep the principle more permanent than the implementation. For example, suppose 6 months from now, you found a caretaker position with a private room, utilities included, and property responsibilities in exchange for modest rent. That might actually satisfy your principle better than vehicle living because it preserves low costs while reducing wear on you and your vehicle. Or suppose your business grew to the point where having a dedicated editing studio significantly increased your income. Then a room or small apartment might stop being merely an expense and become productive infrastructure. The important thing is that the principle, maximize agency per dollar spent, remains intact even if the specific solution changes. I also noticed something philosophical in what you wrote. Open quote, when you hold on to a job or a marriage or a relationship or an apartment or a series of possessions, they will eventually put you in a position where you are in service to them. Close quote. I think there's wisdom there, but I'd phrase it a little differently. Almost everything valuable comes with obligations. A relationship asks for attention. A business asks for effort. A home asks for maintenance. The question isn't whether you'll serve something. It's what is worth serving. Some obligations reduce freedom without giving much back. Others create opportunities that outweigh their cost. So rather than avoiding obligation entirely, I think your approach is really about becoming more selective about which obligations you accept. Finally, something you've said before has become clearer to me over the last few weeks. Your goal doesn't seem to be wealth in the traditional sense. Your goal is independence. Money, for you, isn't primarily about consumption, it's about reducing coercion. Every recurring expense is something asking for next month's labor. Every debt is a future claim on your time. Every unnecessary possession has a maintenance cost. That's a philosophy that can be lived thoughtfully. The main thing I'd watch is not letting independence become isolation. The movie you're taking your roommate to see, the time with your daughter, your work relationships, and your interest in caretaker communities all suggest you're already aware of that balance. You aren't trying to disappear from society. You seem to be trying to participate in it on terms that leave you with enough flexibility to keep choosing your direction. Whether vehicle living remains the right answer for years or becomes a bridge to something else, the deeper pattern I see is that you're optimizing for optionality. You're trying to put yourself in a position where, if an opportunity appears or life changes suddenly, you can say yes without being trapped by obligations you no longer believe are serving you. That's a rational objective, provided you keep periodically checking that the strategy is still serving the principle and not the other way around.
Right. So there's value in being able to look at what you're thinking and why you're thinking it and have it talked back to you from a processed viewpoint that is not yours, and being able to bounce an idea, log a thought, and then come back to it and look at it and build a fabric, a network of these thoughts and reflections gives you a stronger ability to focus on your environment and on what you're doing and on how you're doing it, and not be distracted by things in the world, but to stay on track and to interact with your goals, your plans, your strategies, and the actions that you're taking on a daily basis to make things happen. And having that kind of a tool reflect back to you a usable series of points and processes that reinforce the systems that you're already operating. It's not as though AI supplies an answer. It's AI supplies a perspective, and then it's on you to do something with it. It's powerful. Check it out.